Happy Monday, everybody. Hope your week's starting out well. Sorry we've been on a 2-week break, so we're just getting back into the flow. Thanks for bearing with us. As always, if you're interested in what this practice is, check out the intro video in the description below. Subscribe, leave any questions, and reach out if you're appreciating the practice. That being said, let's jump into this week's practice. The last couple of weeks, we've been exploring kind of the foundational philosophical principles of Meristem, starting with movement and a basis for understanding a human being through the subtle movements that they're demonstrating. We then took a look at healing and Meristem's awaken the possible attitude to healing. We then looked at the idea of the archetype and something that is an ideal that we're striving for. And so in this week's philosophical point number 3, as instructors, it's our job to constantly be learning and constantly be engaging in self-development to be more effective in working with our students. And that looks like continuing to research and watch and observe the movement patterns of the individuals that we're working with, including ourselves. That then means doing research or reading or finding other ways that people think about things to come to an understanding of what the archetype might be that we're helping somebody move towards, and then coming up with creative ways to help an individual move from where they're at more towards the archetype in terms of what we're going for an integrated human being. And so this is philosophy point number 3, this ongoing education that I need to do for myself, along with building my tool set that can match up with the movement patterns that I'm seeing and help an individual move to the archetype. So some examples are looking at ADHD and taking some basic patterns from ADHD. One might being impulse control and jumping into a conversation or needing to respond or skip the line because you're all fired up inside and you just want to go do that thing that has kind of got your attention. So you zeroed in on that thing and you've completely disconnected from the context of the things that are around you. So that's a picture, right? An impulse, a fired up, an over focus, a loss of context. And we've used these terms content versus context. And in this example, I'm going to use content as everything that is inside of me that I'm focusing on outside of myself. And the context is the actual environment and situation that I'm in. And so from an ADHD standpoint, I've almost disassociated. I've gotten so focused in on the thing that I want or the thing that I need to say that I've become disassociated from the context of that. And so what is the archetype that we're striving for? Well, in my thought, a healthy integrated human being can have impulses rise up within themselves, thoughts, ideas, things that they want to do. At the same time, they're staying connected to the environment and understanding, where somebody's moving over here or how a conversation is moving. And in that process, evaluating how what I have inside myself fits into what's going on outside myself. And if I come to the realization, this has completely moved on from what I have to bring up, letting that go and waiting for the next thing to come up to jump in. Or noticing, hey, this is the right time for me to throw the thing that I had out. Now it's the right time, or it's my turn in line because the line has moved up. Everyone in front of me has gotten their opportunity, and now it's my chance. That's a more simplistic version of it. So that's the archetype we're going for an integrated human being when it comes to how do I engage in a conversation or in a social process like taking your turn. And so then what we're trying to do is build a tool to help somebody move from my inability to connect with context and help build the bridge between the balancing act of content and context within myself. There's some simple examples that might be count to 10 before you talk. That's self-regulation. That's waiting to see how important what I have to say is, or it comes up. Another way to think about it is, could I create a game or an activity that simulates the going back and forth between myself and the environment and seeing, what the connect is. Let's say if I'm working with wood and I have a certain angle that I need to cut, and I use a chisel, and that didn't quite work. I use a hammer, that didn't quite work. I now use a saw, and that worked really well. So what I've done is I've had an idea of what I wanted to do, and I've tried a couple different tools and finally found one that really helped me accomplish what I wanted to do. That's freedom of experimentation. And sometimes in creating an opportunity for somebody to have the freedom of experimentation, they come to the actual connection between content and context. And as teachers and instructors, we can guide that process. And so really what we're doing is delving deeper into ourselves so that we can do that creative thinking process, which is our value, which is our practice for this week. How do I see the subtle movement pattern that's occurring? In ADHD, it might be this gesture, like impulse control is like up and out. And so I need to figure out a way to bring it down while still being able to express, but it's a dual direction that I need to move in relationship to hold myself in ground while still expressing, versus it all kind of just coming out whenever it wants to come out. And so what we're doing is looking at that gesture, looking at those movement habits, and then seeing what can we come up with as an instructor to match that, to meet that, and to lead it more toward this integrated archetype of how we help an individual manage themselves and integrate themselves to be able to be both with content and context at the same time, and then know when to act on either. The value for this week is I learned from my environment. I learned from the natural world. And in this case, we're going to use the definition of context that we're talking about and explore how I'm being disconnected from the context, and build out ways in which I can reconnect to the context. So for example, I might be in a process, I have a class that I'm teaching, and I have content that I want to get through, and it's just not matching up with what the student's interested. The student is just not engaged. How can I take a step back and understand the context of the situation in terms of that individual, in terms of what they might be interested in terms of what they're drawn to, and adjust the tool that I'm offering them to move more towards the archetype, which is that healthy integration. And so we're really letting the environment inform us from a contextual standpoint so that we get better at matching the tool to the context, or the content to the context that's presenting itself. And so this is our work for the week. We're exploring this principle of ongoing self-learning through understanding movement and looking at the archetype and looking at the movement patterns for somebody and finding the right tool to help an individual move from where they're at towards the archetype. We're looking at creative thinking. How can I come up with a tool that effectively helps someone get from A to B? And then we're looking at how do we learn from the context to better present that material in a way that really creates a draw. And just one last, going to our infographic here, what we're looking at is, let's say, observation of ADHD. One specific example of ADHD might be jumping in, attention shifting really quickly, impulse overcomes context, disconnected movement. And when we say disconnected movement, we're not saying disconnected from self. Every movement of myself has a purpose and has a need, and I don't believe in that there's bad movements. But what we are asking, is there a time and a place for that movement, and is it being used as effectively and efficiently as possible? Then we're looking at, hey, what are we trying to do? This integrated balanced self within being able to receive and process both content and context at the same time, and discern if I've missed the moment and move on, or if it's the right moment and I bring it in. And then finally, finding tools and building activities to help that gap close. So this is our practice for the week. As always, take it in bite sizes. We're starting with our self first, then we're going to other. And so one of the most fundamental things is starting to look at your own habits and then being creative around what you can use for your own tools to break out of your where you might be moving and move more towards the archetype. And in nature, that actually models what we're wanting to show to somebody else that we're working with. So this is what we're shooting for. As always, bite sizes. Let's go forward and awaken the possible.